Stop that plane now! I love her!
This is the moment Elliot Reeves, heir to a billion-dollar empire, risked everything. His reputation, his safety, his future, all for the woman walking away from him.
You're a pretty little hobby, but don't mistake that for belonging. You do not belong in here.
His mother made her choice clear: the family fortune or the flower shop girl. No one expected what happened next. Before we begin this emotional journey, we'd love to know, where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city in the comments below. Talia Monroe stood in the back room of her grandmother's flower shop, staring at her computer screen. Her hands trembled as she read the email again. Congratulations, we are pleased to offer you a fellowship at the Florence Institute of Floral Design. Tears welled up in her eyes. After years of putting everyone else first, something wonderful was finally happening for her. You deserve this, whispered Jen, her best friend since high school. Jen had been there through everything. When Talia's mother died, when she had to raise her younger siblings, when she took over her grandmother's struggling flower shop. I can't believe they chose me, Talia said, her voice barely audible. Chai. 27, Talia had spent most of her life taking care of others. First her siblings after their mother's sudden death, then the flower shop her grandmother had built from nothing. Duty had always come before dreams. Are you going to accept? Jen asked, squeezing Talia's shoulder. Talia hesitated. I want to, I really do, but the shop, my sister's graduation, and I don't know if I can just leave. You always do this, Jen said with a sigh. You put everyone else first. When are you going to live your own life? Before Talia could answer, the bell above the shop door jingled. Customer, she said, wiping her eyes quickly. We'll talk about this later. Talia walked into the main area of Moonlight Blooms, the small flower shop that had been in her family for 2 generations. The shop was cozy, with wooden shelves filled with colorful arrangements, potted plants hanging from the ceiling, and the sweet scent of fresh flowers filling the air. The afternoon had been quiet because of the storm that was brewing outside. Rain pounded against the windows and the wind howled. Talia didn't expect any customers this late in the day, especially with the weather turning so nasty. But there he was, a tall man standing just inside the door, soaking wet from the rain. Water dripped from his dark hair onto the shoulders of his expensive-looking suit. He seemed out of place in her simple shop, like something from another world. I'm sorry to barge in like this, he said, running a hand through his wet hair. The storm caught me off guard. Don't worry about it, Talia replied with a warm smile. You're welcome to wait it out here. As if on cue, a flash of lightning lit up the sky, followed by a deafening clap of thunder. The lights flickered once, twice, and then went out completely. Perfect timing, the man muttered. Talia moved behind the counter, feeling her way in the familiar space. I have some candles somewhere. Ah, here they are. She lit a few candles, placing them around the shop. The soft golden light cast long shadows on the walls and illuminated the stranger's face. He was handsome, with strong features and eyes that seemed troubled. I'm Talia, she said, offering her hand. He hesitated before taking it. His palm was warm, despite his rain-soaked clothes. Eli, he replied. Nice to meet you, even under these circumstances. Well, Eli, it looks like we're stuck here for a while. Would you like some tea? I keep a kettle in the back. He nodded, seeming grateful for the offer. That would be nice, thank you. Talia busied herself making tea on the small camping stove she kept for emergencies. When she returned with 2 steaming mugs, she found Eli looking at the photographs on the wall behind the counter, pictures of her grandmother, her siblings, and herself at various ages. Family? He asked, taking the mug she offered. Yes, that's my grandmother. She started this shop. And those are my brother and sister, Mike and Sarah. And your parents? Talia's smile faltered slightly. My dad left when I was 10. My mom passed away 7 years ago. I'm sorry, Eli said, and he seemed to genuinely mean it. It's been hard, but we managed. I raised my siblings after Mom died. Sarah's graduating from high school next month, and Mike's in his 2nd year of college. Eli looked impressed. That couldn't have been easy. It wasn't, Talia admitted, but they're good kids. They made it worth it. They fell into easy conversation as the storm raged outside. Talia learned that Eli worked in the family business. Though he was vague about the details, He traveled a lot, loved books, and had a passion for gardening, something that surprised her given his polished appearance. "I find peace in it," he explained. "There's something honest about working with your hands, watching things grow." Talia understood completely. "That's why I love this shop. Everything here is real, alive. I feel connected to something bigger than myself." As the hours passed, the candles burned lower, casting their faces in a warm glow. They talked about books they loved, places they dreamed of visiting, and the quiet sorrows they carried. "I feel like I'm always living someone else's life," Eli confessed, staring into his tea. "Following a path that was chosen for me." Talia nodded. "I understand that feeling. Sometimes I wonder who I'd be if I didn't have all these responsibilities." "What would you do if you could do anything?" he asked. Talia hesitated, then decided to tell him about the fellowship. "I just got offered a chance to study floral design in Florence. It's been my dream, but you feel guilty for wanting something for yourself," Eli finished for her. She looked at him, surprised by how easily he understood. "Exactly. By the time the storm passed and the lights flickered back on, it was nearly midnight. They both seemed startled by the sudden brightness, as if waking from a dream. "I should go," Eli said, standing up. "Thank you for the shelter and the conversation." "Any time," Talia replied, meaning it more than she expected to. At the door, he turned back to her. "For what it's worth, I think you should take that fellowship. Sometimes we have to choose ourselves." Then he was gone, disappearing into the wet night. Talia stood in the doorway for a long moment, wondering if she would ever see him again. She didn't have to wonder for long. 3 days later, Eli returned to the shop, this time with no storm to blame for his visit. He carried a book, one they had discussed during the power outage. "I thought you might like to borrow this," he said, almost shyly. It became a pattern. Eli would visit the shop every few days, sometimes just for a few minutes, other times staying, until closing. He never mentioned where he lived or what his last name was. Talia didn't ask. There was something fragile about their friendship, as if too many questions might break the spell. One evening, nearly a month after they first met, Eli arrived just as Talia was closing. "I need some help," he said, seeming uncharacteristically nervous. "The garden at my place is a disaster. I was wondering if you might give me some advice." Talia agreed, locking up the shop and following him to his car, a sleek, expensive vehicle that confirmed her suspicions about his wealth. They drove to a modest but elegant apartment building on the outskirts of town. "This is your place?" she asked, surprised. She had expected something grander based on his clothes and car. "It's one of them," he said vaguely. "I stay here when I need space." The garden he mentioned was a small terrace attached to the apartment. It was indeed in rough shape. Neglected plants wilting in poorly chosen spots, soil dried out and cracked. "Oh, this needs a complete do-over," Talia said, already forming a plan in her mind. "I was hoping you'd say that," Eli replied with a smile. "I have supplies inside." They spent the evening planning the garden renovation. Eli seemed genuinely interested in her ideas, taking notes and asking thoughtful questions. By the time they finished, it was late, and they were sitting on the floor of his living room, surrounded by gardening books and sketches. "You really know your stuff," Eli said, looking at her with admiration. "It's my passion," Talia replied. "Plants are honest. They only thrive with proper care and attention, no shortcuts." Eli's expression turned serious. "I haven't been entirely honest with you, Talia." Her heart sank. "What do you mean?" He seemed to struggle with his words. "My life is complicated. There are parts of it I haven't shared with you." "We all have our secrets," Talia said softly. "But I don't want to have secrets from you," he replied, moving closer to her. "I just don't know how to explain everything without risking what we have." "And what do we have, Eli?" Talia asked, her heart pounding. Instead of answering, he leaned forward and kissed her. It was gentle at first, then deepened as she responded. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathless. "I've wanted to do that since the night of the storm," Eli confessed. "Me too," Talia admitted. That night marked a change in their relationship. Over the next weeks, they fell into a rhythm. They'd work on his garden during weekends, have quiet dinners in her apartment above the flower shop, and share books and stories. Eli never talked about his family or his work beyond vague references, and Talia didn't push. She was too happy, too caught up in the simple joy of being with someone who seemed to truly see her. One evening, as they sat in her small kitchen eating pasta she had made, Eli asked, "Have you decided about Florence?" Talia sighed. "I asked for an extension. They gave me until next month to decide." "What's holding you back?" "Everything," she said. "The shop, Sarah's graduation, leaving everything I know." "And me?" Eli asked quietly. Talia met his eyes. "Yes." "And you?" He reached across the table and took her hand. "I don't want to be the reason you give up your dream." "But what about us? Florence is for a year." "A year isn't forever," Eli said. "And I could visit." Talia squeezed his hand, grateful for his understanding. But a part of her wondered if their relationship could survive the distance when there was still so much she didn't know about him. May arrived, bringing warm days and the buzz of end-of-school activities. Sarah, Talia's sister, was busy with senior events, and Talia found herself pulled in multiple directions, running the shop, helping Sarah, and spending time with Eli. One afternoon, Jen came into the shop with a strange expression on her face. "Have you seen this?" she asked, placing a business magazine on the counter. Talia glanced down and felt her world tilt. There on the cover was Eli, except the caption read, "Elliot Reeves, heir to the Reeves fortune." He was wearing a tailored suit and standing in front of a sleek office building, looking every inch the wealthy businessman. "That's him, isn't it? Your mystery man?" Jen asked. Talia could only nod, her mind racing. The Reeves family was notorious in their city. Old money, powerful, with their name on half the buildings downtown. They were known for their ruthless business practices and, according to rumors, their thinly veiled racism. "Talia, do you know who he is, what his family is like?" "I thought I knew him," Talia whispered. That evening, when Eli, or rather Elliot, came to the shop, Talia was waiting, with the magazine on the counter. "You should have told me," she said as soon as he walked in. He saw the magazine and froze. "Talia, I can explain." "Explain what? That you're Elliot Reeves, not just Eli? That your family owns half the city? That you've been lying to me since the day we met?" "I never lied about who I am," he insisted, moving toward her. "Just my name and my background." "That's a pretty big omission, don't you think?" Elliot ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she now recognized as a sign of his distress. "I wanted you to know me, not my family name, not the expectations that come with it." "Why are you ashamed of me?" Talia asked, voicing her deepest fear. "Am I just some secret you keep from your real life?" "No," Elliot exclaimed, reaching for her hands. "Never think that. I kept my name from you because I didn't want to lose the way you looked at me." "What does that mean?" "Everyone else sees Elliot Reeves, heir to a fortune, a name, a bank account. You saw me, just me. You saw a man who loves gardening and books and quiet conversations. I've never had that before." Talia wanted to stay angry, but the pain in his eyes was real. "You should have trusted me with the truth." "I know," he said. "I was afraid. My family, their expectations. It's suffocating. With you, I could breathe." "And now?" Talia asked. "Now I'm asking you to forgive me," Elliot said. "I fell in love with the woman who helped customers choose the perfect flowers for anniversaries they almost forgot, who reads poetry aloud on rainy evenings, who treats every plant like it deserves a chance to thrive. I fell in love with you. Talia, not your name, not your status, just you." Talia felt tears welling in her eyes. "I fell in love with the man who helped me carry soil bags and listened to me read poetry aloud. Not the name. But next time, trust me." They reconciled that night, talking for hours about his family, his reluctant role in their business, and his dream of breaking free. Elliot shared stories of growing up under the weight of the Reeves name, the expectations, the pressure, the unspoken rules about who was acceptable company. "My parents have my whole life planned," he explained. "Who I'll marry, when I'll take over the company, even where I'll live. I've never had a choice." "Everyone has a choice," Talia said. "It's just that some choices are harder than others." As May turned to June, Their relationship deepened. Elliot began introducing Talia to parts of his world: nice restaurants, art galleries, jazz clubs. She felt out of place sometimes, but appreciated his effort to share his life with her. Then came the invitation. My family's annual summer gala. "Is this weekend," Elliot said one evening as they walked through the park. "I want you to come with me." Talia stopped walking. "Are you sure? Won't your family be there?" "That's the point," he said, taking her hands. "I'm tired of hiding how I feel about you. I want everyone to know that I love you. Even your parents? Especially my parents. It's time they understood that I'm making my own choices now." Talia agreed, though anxiety gnawed at her. Sarah helped her choose a simple but elegant lavender dress, the nicest thing she owned. On the night of the gala, Elliot picked her up in a limousine, looking devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo. "You look beautiful," he said, his eyes full of admiration. "I feel like I'm playing dress-up," Talia admitted, smoothing the fabric of her dress nervously. "Just be yourself," Elliot assured her. "That's all I want." The Reeves estate was like something from a movie. A sprawling mansion with manicured gardens, valets parking expensive cars, and guests in designer clothes sipping champagne. Talia felt every bit the outsider she was. As Elliot led her through the crowd, she noticed the stares, the whispers, the raised eyebrows. He introduced her proudly to business associates, cousins, friends from college. Some were polite. Others barely concealed their disdain. "So you run a flower shop?" one woman asked, her voice dripping with condescension. "How quaint." "She's an artist," Elliot corrected firmly. "Her arrangements are featured in the city's best venues." Talia squeezed his hand gratefully. Then came the moment she had been dreading. A tall, elegant woman with Elliot's eyes approached them, a false smile fixed on her face. "Mother," Elliot said, his voice tight. "This is Talia Monroe." "Talia, this is my mother, Victoria Reeves." "How lovely to meet you, dear," Victoria said, her eyes cold as ice. "Elliot has been so secretive about you." "It's nice to meet you too, Mrs. Reeves," Talia replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Victoria linked her arm through Talia's. "Let me show you around. Elliot, your father needs you in the study." Before Talia could object, she was being led away from Elliot and toward a quiet corner of the mansion. Victoria's grip on her arm was like a vice. "Let's not waste time with pleasantries," Victoria said once they were alone. "You seem like a smart girl, so I'll be direct." "I'd appreciate that," Talia replied, lifting her chin. "Elliot has responsibilities. To this family, to our legacy. He may be infatuated with you now, but make no mistake, this is temporary. You're a pretty little hobby, but don't mistake that for belonging. We don't mix blood in this family." The words hit Talia like a physical blow. She had expected disapproval, even snobbery, but not this naked racism. "I love your son," Talia said, her voice shaking with emotion. "And he loves me." Victoria's smile was pitying. "Love? Perhaps. But love doesn't build empires, dear. Elliot knows his duty." Talia couldn't bear to hear more. She excused herself and fled to the nearest bathroom, locking the door behind her. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, seeing the hurt in her own eyes. For a moment, she considered staying, fighting for Elliot, proving Victoria wrong. But then she thought of her life, her siblings who needed her, her shop, her dreams of Florence. She thought of Elliot, torn between his family and her. Her decision crystallized. She loved him too much to make him choose. Talia left the gala, without saying goodbye to Elliot, sending him a text that she wasn't feeling well and had called a cab. That night she cried herself to sleep, mourning what could have been. The next morning she went to his apartment, knowing he would come looking. For her at the shop, he opened the door, relief washing over his face. "Talia, I was so worried. Are you okay? Why did you leave?" She steeled herself for what she had to do. "We need to talk, Elliot." They sat on his couch, the same one where they had shared so many conversations, so much laughter, so much love. "Your mother made her feelings very clear last night, Talia." Sayed Elliot's face darkened with anger. "What did she say to you?" "It doesn't matter," Talia replied. "What matters is that I realized something. Your love made me feel whole, but I won't fight to belong to people who hate me for existing. I don't care what my family thinks, Elliot insisted, reaching for her hands. I love you. That's all that matters. But it's not, Talia said gently. You can't escape your name, your responsibilities, and I can't ask you to choose between your family and me. You're not asking. I'm choosing you. No, Talia said, tears streaming down her face. I'm choosing for both of us. I'm accepting the Florence Fellowship. I leave next week. Talia, please, Elliot begged, his voice breaking. We can work this out. She cupped his face in her hands. Your family will never accept me. And even if you say you don't care now, that resentment will grow. I won't be the reason you lose everything. You are everything, he whispered. Talia kissed him one last time, trying to memorize the feel of his lips, the scent of his skin, the warmth of his embrace. Goodbye, Elliot, she said, standing up. I'll never regret loving you. She walked out of his apartment, out of his life, carrying only the weight of her broken heart and the dream of Florence to sustain her. A week later, Talia boarded a plane to Italy, leaving behind a letter for Elliot that she had slipped under his door the night before. In it, she poured out all her love, her dreams for him, her hope that he would find happiness. What she didn't know was that her goodbye had sparked something in Elliot, a determination, a clarity, a courage he hadn't known he possessed. As her plane took off, carrying her across the ocean, Elliot was making a decision that would change both their lives forever. But that was a story for another day. The morning after Talia left for Florence, Elliot sat alone in his expensive penthouse, staring at her letter. He had read it so many times that the paper was soft from handling. His eyes lingered on her final words. If I ever see you again, I won't be too afraid to love you out loud. The letter fell from his hands as he buried, his face in his palms, the weight of what he had lost crushed down on him. Talia was gone, flying across the ocean, because he had been too weak to stand up to his family. The sound of his phone ringing pulled him from his thoughts. It was his mother. Elliot, darling, Victoria Reeves said, her voice smooth as silk. I've been trying to reach you since the gala. Are you ill? I'm fine, Mother, he replied coldly. Good. Then I expect you at the board meeting this afternoon. Your father has important matters to discuss regarding your future with the company. Elliot's grip tightened on the phone. Did you say something to Talia at the gala? Something to make her leave? There was a brief pause. I merely had a frank discussion with the girl. Someone needed to help her understand reality. What exactly did you say to her? His voice was dangerously quiet. Only the truth, Elliot. That your little infatuation was temporary. That we don't mix blood in this family. She needed to hear it. Elliot felt something snap inside him. A lifetime of obedience, of swallowing his objections, of playing by their rules. I won't be at the meeting, he said flatly. Don't be ridiculous. Of course you'll be there. It's your responsibility. No, Mother. For once in my life, I'm making my own choice. And I choose not to be part of a family that would hurt someone I love. He hung up before she could respond, then turned off his phone. For the first time in his life, Elliot felt a strange sense of freedom. He looked around his penthouse, at the expensive furniture chosen by his mother's decorator, the art selected to impress business associates, the life built to please everyone but himself. None of it mattered without Talia. Elliot grabbed his keys and drove to the only place he felt truly comfortable, the small apartment where he and Talia had planted their garden. Standing on the terrace, surrounded by the flowers and herbs they had chosen together, he made a decision. He was done living a lie. The next morning, Elliot walked into the offices of the Reeves Corporation, dressed in his most expensive suit. The receptionist looked startled to see him. Mr. Reeves, your father is looking for you. The board meeting yesterday. I know, Elliot said calmly. Please tell him I'm on my way to his office. Richard Reeves looked up from his desk with a thunderous expression when Elliot entered. Where the hell were you yesterday? Do you have any idea how embarrassing it was to explain your absence? I'm not here to apologize, Elliot said, standing tall. I'm here to tell you that I'm done. Done? What are you talking about? I'm withdrawing from the Reeves business. I'm refusing my inheritance. I want nothing to do with this family anymore. Richard rose from his chair, his face flushed with anger. This is about that girl, isn't it? That flower shop owner your mother told me about. You're throwing away your birthright for some— Don't, Elliot warned, his voice sharp. Don't say another word about her. You'll change your mind when she's gone, Richard said dismissively. Come back when you're thinking clearly. She's already gone, Elliot replied quietly. She left because she didn't want to come between me and my family. She loved me that much, and I was too blind to see that. You were never worth that sacrifice. You're making a terrible mistake, son. No, the mistake was trying to be the son you wanted instead of the man I actually am. Elliot placed a folded document on the desk. My formal resignation from all Reeves companies and boards. My lawyer has the paperwork renouncing my claim to any family assets. Richard's face paled. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life, Elliot said. Goodbye, father. As Elliot walked out of the Reeves building for the last time, he felt lighter than he had in years. He had no idea what came next, but for the first time the future was his to decide. What Elliot didn't know was that a junior reporter for the city newspaper had overheard his conversation with the receptionist. By that evening, the story was breaking across social media. Reeves' heir renounces fortune for love. Within days, the media frenzy was in full swing. Reporters camped outside Elliot's apartment building. Business news programs speculated about the future of Reeves Corporation without its heir apparent. Society columnists dug into the story of the flower shop girl who had captured the heart of one of the country's most eligible bachelors. Elliot refused all interviews, all requests for statements. He changed his phone number, stayed away from social media, and focused on figuring out what he actually wanted from life. Meanwhile, across the ocean, Talia was trying to build a new life in Florence. She had rented a small apartment near the Institute, with a tiny balcony where she grew herbs and flowers. Every morning, she walked to class along cobblestone streets, past ancient buildings and bustling cafes. The city was beautiful, the program challenging, and her fellow students friendly. But at night, alone in her apartment, she would reread Elliot's goodbye letter, the one he had slipped under her door after she left his apartment that last day. She memorized every word, especially the line that broke her heart. If I ever see you again, I won't be too afraid to love you out loud. Talia had no idea about the storm she had left behind in America. She was too busy with her studies to follow news from home, and she had asked her siblings not to mention Elliot when they called. It was too painful. One evening in late July, Talia was sitting in a small cafe, sketching designs for a floral project, when her phone rang. It was Sarah, her sister. Talia, have you seen the news? It's everywhere. What news? Talia asked, confused. Elliot. He gave up everything. His inheritance, his position in the family company, everything. It's all over the internet. Talia's heart pounded. What are you talking about? After you left, he went to his father and told him he was done with the family. He walked away from millions, maybe billions, and it's all because of you. The papers are calling it the Reeves family scandal. People are digging into the family's history, exposing all sorts of things, discriminatory business practices, racist policies. It's a huge mess. Talia could barely breathe. Is Elliot okay? No one knows. He's disappeared from public view, but Talia, he did this for you. He chose you over everything. After hanging up, Talia sat frozen in the cafe, her coffee growing cold. Her first instinct was to call Elliot, but she stopped herself. What would she say? That she was sorry? That she wanted him back? It wasn't that simple. He had made this grand gesture, but they still came from different worlds, and she had her fellowship, her chance to finally live her own dream. Back in America, Elliot was indeed keeping a low profile. He had moved permanently into his small apartment, the one Talia had helped him make into a home. He spent his days volunteering at a community garden in one of the city's poorer neighborhoods, teaching children about plants and nature. The work was satisfying in a way his corporate career never had been. His family had not taken his defection quietly. Victoria had tried to have him declared mentally unstable. Richard had threatened lawsuits. But Elliot stood firm, and eventually they retreated to lick their wounds and manage the growing public relations disaster. The Reeves name, once synonymous with power and prestige, was now being scrutinized. Journalists uncovered decades of questionable business dealings, patterns of discrimination in Reeves properties, and political donations to candidates with troubling views on race. The empire that had seemed untouchable began to show cracks. One evening in August, Elliot was watering the plants on his terrace when there was a knock at his door. He opened it to find Jen, Talia's best friend, standing there with an uncomfortable expression. "Jen, what are you doing here? I need to talk to you," she said, brushing past him into the apartment. "About Talia." Elliot's heart leapt. "Is she okay? Has something happened?" "She's fine," Jen said, pacing nervously. "But she doesn't know I'm here. She'd probably kill me if she knew." "Then why are you here?" Jen stopped pacing and faced him. "Because you two are the most stubborn, self-sacrificing people I've ever met. You're both miserable without each other, but neither of you will make the first move." "She's in Florence living her dream," Elliot said. "I won't interfere with that." "Her dream?" Jen laughed bitterly. "She's going through the motions, Elliot. She works hard, she smiles when people are watching, but she's not happy. She misses you." "Has she said that?" "She doesn't have to. I've known her since we were kids. I can see it in her eyes, hear it in her voice when we talk on the phone." Elliot sat down heavily on the couch. "What do you want me to do, Jen? Fly to Italy and beg her to come back?" "No," Jen said firmly. "I want you to fight for her. Not with grand gestures or by giving up your fortune, although that was pretty impressive. Fight for her by showing her that your love is stronger than your fears." "How?" "That's for you to figure out. But you should know that she's coming back next month for Sarah's graduation. She'll only be here for a week." After Jen left, Elliot sat on his terrace for hours, thinking about what she had said. The lavender plants he and Talia had planted together were blooming, their scent filling the air. It reminded him of Talia's dress at the gala, the way she had looked that night. Beautiful, brave, and utterly out of place in his family's world. But he didn't have that world anymore. He had chosen a different path. Maybe, just maybe, it was a path they could walk together. Elliot began to form a plan. September came, bringing cooler temperatures and the day of Sarah's graduation. Talia flew back from Florence, her heart both heavy and light at the prospect of being in the same city as Elliot again. She had decided not to contact him during her visit. It would be too painful to see him, knowing she would have to leave again. The graduation ceremony was held in the high school auditorium, decorated with blue and gold streamers. Talia sat with Mike, her brother, cheering loudly when Sarah walked across the stage to receive her diploma. Their little sister had grown up so fast. Talia felt a pang of regret for the month she had missed. After the ceremony, they went out for dinner at Sarah's favorite restaurant. The siblings laughed and talked, catching up on each other's lives. Sarah was heading to college on a scholarship. Mike had a new girlfriend. The flower shop was doing well under the management of Talia's aunt. No one mentioned Elliot, though Talia caught Sarah and Mike exchanging meaningful glances a few times. She chose to ignore it. This was Sarah's day, and she wouldn't let her own heartache overshadow it. The next few days passed in a blur of visits with friends, trips to the flower shop, and helping Sarah prepare for college. Talia kept expecting to run into Elliot somewhere. The city wasn't that big, but he never appeared. On her last night in town, Talia couldn't sleep. She sat on the porch of their family home, looking up at the stars and thinking about everything that had happened since that stormy night when Elliot had walked into her shop. Sarah joined her, wrapping a blanket around both their shoulders, like they used to do when they were younger. "You miss him, don't you?" Sarah asked softly. Talia nodded, not bothering to pretend she didn't know who Sarah meant. "Every day." "Then why don't you call him? He gave up everything for you, Talia." "That's exactly why I can't," Talia replied. "I never asked him to do that. I never wanted him to lose his family, his inheritance, his future. But he did it anyway, because he loves you." "Love isn't always enough, Sarah." Sarah squeezed her sister's hand. "It can be, if you're brave enough to let it." The next morning, Talia said tearful goodbyes to her siblings at home. They had classes and couldn't take her to the airport. She promised to call as soon as she landed in Florence, hugged them tightly, and got into the taxi with her suitcase. As the taxi pulled away, Sarah turned to Mike with a mischievous smile. "Do you think he'll actually do it?" Mike grinned. "If he doesn't, I'm going to be really disappointed in him." At the airport, Talia checked in for her flight and made her way through security. She had 2 hours before boarding, so she found a quiet corner in a cafe and pulled out a book. But she couldn't focus on the words. All she could think about was that she was leaving again, going back to Florence, back to a life without Elliot. She didn't notice the commotion at first, the raised voices, the security guards running. But then she heard someone shouting, the words echoing through the terminal. "Stop that plane! I love her!" Talia froze, her book slipping from her fingers. It couldn't be, but the voice was so familiar, so beloved. She stood up, scanning the crowded terminal, and there he was, Elliot Reeves, being held back by security guards, still shouting, "Please, I need to find Talia Monroe before she boards." Her flight to Florence. The terminal had gone quiet, passengers staring at the scene. Talia felt her heart pounding so hard, she thought it might burst from her chest. With shaking legs, she moved toward him. "Elliot?" she called, her voice barely audible. But he heard her. His head snapped up, his eyes finding hers across the crowded space. The security guards, seeing that he had found who he was looking for, released him with warnings about causing disturbances. Elliot didn't seem to notice. He was focused entirely on Talia, moving toward her as if drawn by a magnet. When he reached her, he dropped to one knee, pulling a slightly crushed bouquet of lavender from his jacket. "I saved these from our first garden," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I've been waiting, hoping you'd come back." Talia took the flowers, their familiar scent bringing tears to her eyes. "Elliot, what are you doing here?" "What I should have done months ago," he said. "Fighting for us. I lost everything that didn't matter, because I realized what did. Please don't go without knowing. You are my everything, Talia." People around them were watching, some filming with their phones, others smiling at the romantic scene. But Talia barely noticed them. She reached out a trembling hand and touched Elliot's face, feeling the warmth of his skin, the slight stubble on his jaw. "You finally let them see you love me," she whispered. "I'll shout it from every rooftop if that's what it takes," Elliot promised. "I love you, Talia Monroe. I've loved you since that stormy night when you lit candles and made tea and listened to me like what I had to say mattered." "It always mattered," Talia said, tears streaming down her face now. "You always mattered." Elliot stood, taking both her hands in his. "I know you have your fellowship, your dreams in Florence. I would never ask you to give that up. But maybe I could come with you. I could write or teach English, or just be the guy who makes you dinner when you come home from class. I don't care what I do as long as I'm with you." Talia's heart felt too full for her chest. "You would do that? Leave everything behind and come to Italy with me?" "Haven't you heard?" Elliot smiled wryly. "I already left everything behind. Now I just want to start building something new, with you." An announcement came over the airport speakers. "Final boarding call for Flight 372 to Florence, Italy." Talia looked toward her gate, then back at Elliot. For so long, she had put others first. Her siblings, her grandmother's shop, even Elliot when she left to spare him from having to choose between her and his family. Now for once, she wanted to choose her own happiness. "I love you, Elliot Reeves," she said, her voice strong and clear. "And yes, I want you to come to Florence with me." Elliot's face broke into a radiant smile. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her, right there in the middle of the airport terminal, with strangers applauding around them. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and laughing, Elliot pressed his forehead to hers. "We need to hurry if we're going to make that flight." "But you don't have a ticket, or clothes, or—" "I have a ticket," Elliot admitted with a sheepish grin. "On standby, and a suitcase in my car, I was hoping, but I was prepared for you to say no to." Talia shook her head, amazed at his faith, his persistence, his love. "Let's go get your bag. We have a plane to catch." As they ran hand in hand through the terminal, Talia felt lighter than she had in months. For the first time in her life, she wasn't leaving something behind. She was running toward her future, with the man she loved by her side. They made it onto the plane just as the doors were closing, collapsing into their seats, breathless and giddy. As the aircraft began to taxi down the runway, Elliot squeezed Talia's hand. "I have something to tell you," he said, his expression turning serious. Talia felt a flicker of anxiety. "What is it?" "After I left the family business, I started looking into their practices more closely. What I found, it wasn't good, Talia. Decades of discrimination, of hurting people. Your mother made her feelings pretty clear at the gala," Talia said quietly. "It went beyond personal prejudice," Elliot explained. "It was systematic, refusing loans to certain neighborhoods, blocking people of color from buying properties in Reeves developments, supporting politicians who pushed racist policies." "That's terrible, but why are you telling me this now?" "Because I've been working with a group of journalists to expose it all," Elliot said. "The story is going to break next week. It's going to be ugly. The Reeves name is going to be dragged through. The mud. And even though I've distanced myself from them, some of that mud might splash on me and by extension on you." Talia studied his face, seeing the worry in his eyes. She leaned over and kissed him softly. "I'm proud of you for doing the right thing, no matter how hard it is. We'll face whatever comes together." Relief washed over Elliot's features. "Together," he agreed. "That's all I want." As the plane lifted off, carrying them across the ocean to their new life, Talia rested her head on Elliot's shoulder. She had spent so many years taking care of others, putting her own dreams on hold. Now, she was finally reaching for those dreams. And, somehow miraculously, the man she loved was reaching with her. The past few months had been a journey neither of them could have predicted that stormy night in the flower shop. There would be challenges ahead. Elliot adjusting to life without wealth and privilege, Talia learning to accept love without fear, both of them building a relationship strong enough to weather whatever storms might come. But as Talia drifted, off to sleep with Elliot's arm around her, she knew one thing for certain. This time they were choosing each other, and that choice would make all the difference. What they didn't know was that back in America, the storm was already brewing. The Reeves family was not going to let their son go or let their secrets be exposed without a fight. And that fight would follow Elliot and Talia all the way to the cobblestone streets of Florence, testing their love in ways they couldn't imagine. Florence welcomed Talia and Elliot with golden sunshine and warm breezes. Their apartment, a small but charming space near the Institute, had a balcony overlooking a quiet courtyard filled with potted plants and climbing vines. It wasn't grand like the Reeves mansion, but to Elliot, it felt more like home than anywhere he'd ever lived. "Do you regret it?" Talia asked one evening as they sat on the balcony, sharing a simple dinner of pasta and local wine. "Giving up everything?" Elliot looked around at their modest surroundings, then back at Talia's face glowing in the sunset light. "Not for a second. I didn't give up anything that mattered." Their first weeks in Florence passed in a happy blur. Talia attended her classes at the Institute, immersing herself in the art of floral design. Elliot, true to his word, found work teaching English to Italian business people. In the evenings, they explored the city together, wandering through ancient streets, discovering hidden cafes and falling more deeply in love. "I never knew life could be this simple," Elliot confessed one night as they walked along the Arno River, the lights of the Ponte Vecchio reflecting in the water. "All those years in the Reeves bubble, I thought happiness meant more money, more power, more things. I was so wrong." Talia squeezed his hand. "Sometimes we have to lose what we thought we wanted to find what we actually need." But their peaceful new life was about to be disrupted. Back in America, the story Elliot had helped uncover was breaking wide open. "Reeves family scandal. Decades of discrimination exposed," screamed the headlines. "Air turns whistleblower against own family," proclaimed another. Richard and Victoria Reeves faced a tsunami of public outrage, shareholder panic, and government investigations. The Reeves Corporation stock plummeted. Longtime business partners distanced themselves. Politicians who had once courted the family's donations now publicly condemned them, and they blamed Elliot for all of it. One morning, as Talia was getting ready for class, her phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. "Have you seen the news? They're coming after Elliot hard." Attached was a link to an article. The headline made Talia's blood run cold. Reeves family claims estranged son mentally unstable, manipulated by girlfriend. She showed it to Elliot when he returned from his morning run. His face darkened as he read the statement from his family's spokesperson, claiming that Elliot had suffered a mental breakdown triggered by the undue influence of a woman who had targeted him for his fortune. "They're trying to discredit me," Elliot said, his voice tight with anger. "If they can convince people I'm unstable, no one will believe what I told those journalists about their business practices." "Will it work?" Talia asked, worry creasing her brow. "I don't know. But my family has a lot of power and even more money. They won't go down without a fight." Over the next few days, more stories appeared. Old classmates suddenly remembering Elliot's erratic behavior in college, former girlfriends claiming he was easily influenced, anonymous sources suggesting Talia had a history of pursuing wealthy men. "None of this is true," Talia cried, throwing her phone down after reading yet another hit piece. "How can they just make up lies about us?" "Because they're desperate," Elliot said grimly. "The truth is coming out and they can't stop it. So they're trying to shoot the messenger, me and anyone associated with me. That means me." "I'm so sorry, Talia. I never wanted to drag you into this mess." She straightened her shoulders. "You didn't drag me anywhere. I chose to be with you knowing who your family is. We'll face this together." But the attacks were taking a toll. Talia's professors at the institute began treating her differently, some with cold formality, others with barely disguised curiosity. Fellow students whispered when she walked by. Even some of the friends they'd made in Florence started to pull away, uncomfortable with the controversy surrounding them. One evening, Elliot returned home to find Talia sitting in the dark, her laptop open to an email from the institute's director. "What's wrong?" he asked, kneeling beside her chair. "They've asked me to take a leave of absence," Talia said, her voice hollow. "The director says my personal situation is causing a distraction. She says I can return when things have settled down." Elliot's face crumpled with guilt. "This is all my fault." "No," Talia said firmly, closing the laptop. "It's your family's fault. Not yours, never yours." But the strain was beginning to show. Elliot became quieter, more withdrawn. He spent hours on the phone with the journalists and lawyers working on the Reeves investigation. At night, Talia would find him on the balcony staring into the darkness, the weight of his family's legacy heavy on his shoulders. "Maybe we should go somewhere else," Talia suggested one night. "Start fresh where no one knows who we are." Elliot shook his head. "They would find us, and I won't keep running from the truth. I need to see this through." The final blow came when Elliot's family filed a lawsuit against him, claiming he had violated confidentiality agreements, stolen proprietary information, and defamed the family name. They were seeking millions in damages. "I don't have millions," Elliot said bleakly when the papers were served. "I walked away from my trust fund. Everything I had is tied up in Reeves Corporation stock, which is practically worthless now." "We'll figure it out," Talia assured him, though her own heart was racing with fear. "We can sell my grandmother's shop if we have to. I would never ask you to do that. That shop is your family's legacy. And you're my family now," Talia said, taking his hands in hers. "Whatever happens, we face it together." But the stress was taking its toll on their relationship. Small arguments flared into bigger ones. The easy comfort they had found in each other began to fray at the edges. Elliot spent more and more time alone, trying to shield Talia from the worst of the legal battle. One night, after a particularly tense day, Talia woke to find Elliot's side of the bed empty. She found him in the kitchen, a half-empty bottle of wine on the table. "You should go back to America," he said without looking at her. "Finish your fellowship somewhere else. Get away from all this." "I'm not leaving you," Talia insisted. "My family won't stop, Talia. They'll keep coming after me, after us until they've destroyed everything. I can't let them hurt you anymore. So what's your solution? Push me away? Fight them alone?" "If that's what it takes to protect you, yes." Talia felt a cold fear grip her heart. This was exactly what she had feared when she first ended things. With Elliot, that his family would come between them, that the weight of his name would crush what they had built together. "We promised each other," she said, her voice breaking. "When we got on that plane, we promised we would face everything, together." "I didn't know how bad it would get," Elliot admitted. I didn't know they would come after you like this. You still don't get it, do you? Talia said, tears streaming down her face. I'm not some fragile flower that needs protection. I'm your partner, your equal. I don't need you to shield me from your battles. I need you to stand beside me so we can fight them together. Elliot finally looked at her, his eyes red-rimmed and tired. I'm so afraid of losing you. The only way you'll lose me is if you push me away, Talia said. Don't make the same mistake I did when I left you the first time. The next morning, they made a decision. They would stop hiding, stop letting the Reeves family control the narrative. They would tell their story, their real story, to the world. With the help of one of the journalists Elliot had been working with, they arranged a television interview with a respected international news program. The interview would be conducted in Florence, in their apartment, showing the simple life they had chosen together. Are you sure about this? Elliot asked Talia the night before the interview. Once we do this, there's no going back. My family will be furious. I've never been more sure of anything, Talia replied. It's time people heard the truth. The interview was scheduled for 10 a.m. The crew arrived early, setting up lights and cameras in their small living room. The interviewer, a well-known journalist named Claire Reynolds, greeted them warmly. Thank you for agreeing to speak with me, she said. I know this isn't easy. We just want people to know the truth, Talia said. The whole truth, Elliot added, squeezing Talia's hand. The cameras rolled, and Claire began with a simple question. Elliot, why did you walk away from your family's fortune? Elliot took a deep breath. Because I couldn't be part of a system that hurt people. The Reeves Corporation has a long history of discrimination, refusing loans to certain neighborhoods, blocking minorities from buying properties, supporting policies that keep people down. When I fell in love with Talia, I saw firsthand how my family's prejudice works, and I couldn't be part of it anymore. Talia, your relationship with Elliot has been portrayed in some media as calculated, that you pursued him for his money. How do you respond to that? Talia smiled sadly. When I met Elliot, I didn't know who he was. He came into my flower shop during a storm, just a man looking for shelter. We fell in love over conversations about books and gardening. He didn't tell me his last name until months later. And when you found out? I was shocked, but not because of his money. I was hurt that he hadn't trusted me with the truth. The interview continued, with Elliot and Talia sharing their story. The night they met, the garden they planted together, their separation and reunion at the airport. They talked about the simple life they had built in Florence, far from the Reeves fortune. What about the lawsuit your family has filed against you, Elliot? Claire asked. They're seeking millions in damages. The lawsuit is an attempt to silence me, Elliot said firmly. But I won't be silenced. The truth about the Reeves Corporation needs to come out, even if it costs me everything. And you're prepared for that? Claire pressed. To lose everything, Elliot looked at Talia, his eyes full of love. I already lost everything once when Talia left. I won't make that mistake again. She is what matters. Our life together is what matters. The rest is just noise. As the interview concluded, Claire asked them one final question. What do you want people to know about you, about your relationship? Talia answered without hesitation. That love is worth fighting for, that it's stronger than hate, stronger than prejudice, stronger than fear. And that sometimes, Elliot added, you have to lose what you thought you wanted to find what you actually need. After the crew packed up and left, Elliot and Talia sat on their balcony, emotionally drained but somehow lighter. Whatever happened next, they had spoken their truth. Do you think it will make a difference? Talia asked. I don't know, Elliot admitted, but I feel better having said it all out loud. The interview aired 3 days later, first in the United States and then internationally. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Social media exploded with support for the couple. Love Wins and Reeves Truth became trending hashtags. The Reeves Corporation stock fell even further as more customers and business partners distanced themselves from the scandal. But more importantly, other victims of the Reeves family's discriminatory practices began coming forward. People who had been denied loans, families who had been prevented from buying homes in certain neighborhoods, employees who had faced harassment and discrimination within the company. "It's working," Elliot said in wonder as he scrolled through news articles on his laptop. People are finally listening. The Reeves family's response was swift and vicious. They doubled down on their lawsuit against Elliot, adding Talia as a defendant. They issued statements calling the interview a calculated performance by an unstable young man and his manipulative partner. They even tried to freeze what little assets Elliot had left, but public opinion had shifted decisively against them. Government agencies launched formal investigations into the company's practices. Shareholders demanded Richard Reeves's resignation. Former business partners began sharing their own stories of the family's unethical behavior. Through it all, Talia and Elliot stood firm, supporting each other, facing each new challenge together. When Talia's fellowship officially terminated her enrollment, citing the controversy, Elliot helped her find a position at a local flower shop. When Elliot's funds were temporarily frozen by a court order, Talia covered their expenses with her "modest savings will get through this," became their mantra, whispered to each other in moments of doubt and fear. And slowly, miraculously, things began to turn around. The lawsuit against them was thrown out by a judge who called it a transparent attempt at intimidation. The institute, facing public backlash, offered to reinstate Talia's fellowship. Elliot was approached by a publisher interested in his story. One evening, as they walked home from dinner at their favorite cafe, Elliot's phone rang. It was his lawyer. "What is it?" Talia asked, seeing his expression change as he listened. "They're offering a settlement," Elliot said, stunned. "My family wants to settle everything privately." "What kind of settlement?" "They'll drop all claims against us. In return, they want me to sign a non-disclosure agreement about my personal experiences with the family. Not about the business practices. That investigation will continue. Just family matters." "Are you going to take it?" Elliot thought for a moment. "I think I might. Not for the money, but for peace. I've said what needed to be said about their business. The personal stuff, maybe that can stay private." Talia nodded, understanding. Despite everything, they were still his family. Some wounds were too personal to expose to the world. 2 days later, they met with the lawyers to sign the settlement papers. The agreement was straightforward. The Reeves family would cease all legal action against Elliot and Talia, and in return, Elliot would not discuss personal family matters publicly. The business investigations would continue unaffected. As they left the lawyer's office, Talia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. "Is it really over?" "This part is," Elliot said. "The investigations into the company will go on for years, probably. But our personal battle with them, yes, I think it's over." That night, they celebrated with a bottle of champagne on their balcony. The stars above Florence seemed especially bright, as if celebrating with them. "What happens now?" Talia asked. Nestled against Elliot's chest. "Now we live," he replied simply. "We build something new, something that's just ours." Talia looked up at him, her heart full. "I had a crazy idea today." "Tell me, what if we opened a flower shop here in Florence? Not right away, but eventually. A place that combines my designs with your love of poetry and gardening. A flower and poetry cafe, maybe." Elliot's eyes lit up. "I love that idea. We could have readings, workshops, a garden space in the back. We could call it Moonlight Blooms, like my grandmother's shop," Talia suggested. "Perfect," Elliot agreed, pulling her closer. "A new beginning, honoring where we came from." As they made plans for their future, Talia realized how far they had come from that stormy night in her shop. They had faced separation, family rejection, public scandal, and legal battles. But through it all, their love had only grown stronger, deeper, more resilient. The next morning, Talia woke to find a small velvet box on her pillow and Elliot watching her nervously from the edge of the bed. "What's this?" she asked, her heart suddenly racing. "Open it," he urged. Inside was a delicate ring with a small, perfect lavender-colored stone set in silver. "It's not a diamond," Elliot said quickly. "I know those come with too many memories of my old life. It's a tanzanite. The color reminded me of the lavender in our garden, of your dress the night of the gala." Talia's eyes filled with tears as Elliot slid off the bed and onto one knee beside her. "Talia Monroe," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I have loved you since that stormy night when you lit candles and made me tea and talked to me like I was just a man, not a name or a fortune. You saw me when no one else did. You loved me enough to let me go, and I love you enough to choose you over everything else in this world." He took the ring from the box. "Will you marry me?" Not Elliot Reeves, heir to a fortune, but just Elliot, the man who wants to plant gardens and read poetry and build a life with you. Talia's tears spilled over as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you, Elliot. Just Elliot, the man I've loved all along." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the love and hope and promise of their shared future. Later that day, as they walked through the streets of Florence, making plans for their wedding, Talia's phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. "Big news! The Reeves Corporation is being forced to establish a $100 million fund to compensate victims of their discriminatory practices. It's all over the news here." Attached was a link to an article detailing the government settlement with the Reeves Corporation. Richard and Victoria Reeves had been forced to step down from the board. The company would be restructured under new leadership, with strict oversight to ensure fair practices going forward. "Your family's empire is falling," Talia said, showing Elliot the article. He read it in silence, his expression thoughtful. "Not falling," he finally said. "Changing, being rebuilt on a better foundation, and that's a good thing." "Do you regret your part in it?" Talia asked gently. "They're still your family." Elliot shook his head. "I regret that it had to happen. This way, but not that it happened. Too many people were hurt for too long. It needed to end." They continued their walk, hand in hand, talking about their wedding plans. They wanted something simple, a garden ceremony, close friends and family, no extravagance or show. "So will you invite your family?" Talia asked cautiously. Elliot considered the question. "I'll send them an invitation. Whether they come or not is up to them." As they turned the corner onto their street, Elliot suddenly stopped, staring at someone, sitting on the steps of their building. "What is it?" Talia asked, following his gaze. The figure stood up, a young woman, slender and elegant with Elliot's eyes. "My sister," Elliot whispered. "Olivia." They approached cautiously. Olivia Reeves looked nervous, out of place in her expensive clothes and perfect makeup. "Elliot," she said when they reached her. I wasn't sure you'd see me. Why are you—" "Here, Olivia," Elliot asked, his voice carefully neutral. She glanced at Talia, then back at her brother. "I saw your interview, and I've been following the news about the company, about what Mum and Dad did. And I didn't know," she said, her composure cracking slightly. "I swear, Elliot, I didn't know how bad it was. The discrimination, the lies, they kept me in the dark." Elliot's expression softened slightly. "You were always their favorite. They protected you." "I don't want their protection anymore," Olivia said firmly. "Not if it means being blind to the truth. That's why I'm here. I wanted to tell you that I'm on your side, and—" She hesitated, looking at Talia. "I wanted to apologize to both of you for not standing up sooner." Talia could feel Elliot's struggle, the hurt and betrayal warring with the love he still felt for his sister. She squeezed his hand in silent support. "Would you like to come up?" Elliot finally asked. "We can talk more comfortably there." Relief washed over Olivia's face. "Yes, I'd like that, thank you." As they climbed the stairs to their apartment, Talia realized this was just the beginning of a new chapter. The scandal, the lawsuit, the settlement, those battles were over. But the work of healing, of rebuilding family ties, of creating something new from the ashes of the old, that was just beginning. And as she looked at Elliot, his face lighter than she had seen it in months as he talked with his sister, Talia knew they would face this new challenge as they had faced all the others, together, with love as their foundation. That night, after Olivia had left with promises to stay in touch, Elliot and Talia stood on their balcony under the stars. Elliot wrapped his arms around Talia from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Thank you," he murmured. "For what?" "For loving me enough to help me find my way back to what matters, for being strong when I faltered, for never giving up on us." Talia turned in his arms to face him. We found our way together, and we'll keep finding it day by day. Elliot kissed her, a kiss full of promise and hope and dreams yet to be realized. As the lights of Florence twinkled around them, Talia knew with absolute certainty that whatever the future held, they would face it side by side, their love a beacon guiding them home. What they didn't know was that the most challenging test of their love was yet to come, one that would shake the very foundation they had built together and force them to decide once and for all what truly mattered in their lives. 6 months had passed since Olivia's surprise visit. Florence was blooming with spring flowers, and so was Talia and Elliot's dream. They had found a small storefront with an attached garden, perfect for the flower and poetry cafe they had envisioned. With Talia's fellowship completed and Elliot's settlement money from his family, they had enough to start their business. "What do you think of this color for the walls?" Talia asked, holding up a paint sample in a soft lavender shade. Elliot smiled, remembering the lavender dress she had worn to the gala, the lavender they had planted in their first garden together, the lavender-colored stone in her engagement ring. "Perfect," he said. They worked side by side to transform the space, painting walls, building shelves, planting the garden. Friends they had made in Florence pitched in, helping create the warm, welcoming atmosphere they wanted for Moonlight Blooms. Olivia had returned to America, but stayed in regular contact. She had broken away from her parents' influence, moving out of the family mansion and taking a job at a non-profit organization focused on fair housing, a direct response to the Reeves Corporation's past discriminatory practices. "Mom and Dad are furious," she told Elliot during one of their video calls, "but I've never felt more like my own person." "I'm proud of you," Elliot said, meaning it. His relationship with his sister was healing, even if the rift with his parents remained. The investigations into the Reeves Corporation continued. Richard and Victoria had been forced out of leadership positions, but they still held significant shares in the company. They had retreated from public view, their reputation in tatters, their social standing diminished. Talia and Elliot had set their wedding date for June, planning a simple ceremony in the garden behind their new shop. Sarah and Mike would fly in from America. Jen would be Talia's maid of honor. Olivia had agreed to attend, despite the tension it would cause with their parents. Life was good, better than either of them had dared to hope during the darkest days of their ordeal. Then, on a sunny April morning, everything changed. Talia was arranging flowers in the front of the shop, which was set to open in 2 weeks, when Elliot burst through the door, his face pale. "What's wrong?" she asked, immediately sensing his distress. "I just got a call from Olivia," he said, his voice shaking. "There's been an accident. My father, he had a heart attack." "Is he?" "He's alive, but in critical condition. They don't know if he'll make it." Elliot ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Talia recognized as a sign of his inner turmoil. "Olivia says my mother is asking for me. She wants me to come home." Talia set down the flowers and moved to Elliot's side, taking his hands in hers. "Do you want to go?" "I don't know," he admitted. "After everything they did, all the pain they caused us. But he's still my father." "Then we should go," Talia said simply. Elliot looked at her in surprise. "We?" "Of course. You didn't think I'd let you face this alone, did you?" Relief washed over his face. "I was afraid you wouldn't want to go back there after how they treated you." "This isn't about me or them," Talia said. "It's about you and what you need, and right now you need to see your father, whatever your complicated feelings about him might be." Within hours, they had packed bags and booked flights back to America. The shop opening would have to wait. Their friends promised to look after the place while they were gone. The flight was long and tense. Elliot barely spoke, lost in thoughts of his father, their troubled relationship, the years of expectations and disappointments. Talia gave him space, offering silent support with her presence. When they landed, Olivia was waiting at the airport, her face drawn with worry. "There's no change," she said as she hugged her brother. "He's still in intensive care." She greeted Talia warmly, the two women having formed a tentative friendship over the past months. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. "He needs you, even if he won't admit it." The drive to the hospital was tense. As they approached the entrance to the intensive care unit, Elliot hesitated. "I don't know if I can do this," he confessed. "You can," Talia assured him, "and I'll be right here waiting when you're done." "You're not coming in," Talia shook her head. "This is between you and your parents. I don't want my presence to create more tension." Reluctantly, Elliot agreed. He and Olivia disappeared through the double doors, leaving Talia alone in the waiting room. Hours passed. Talia tried to read magazines, to distract herself with her phone, but her mind kept returning to Elliot, facing his estranged parents in what might be their final encounter. Finally, the doors opened and Elliot emerged, his face a mask of emotion. "Is he?" Talia asked. "Stable for now," Elliot replied. "The doctors say the next 24 hours will be critical. And your mother," a complex expression crossed Elliot's face. She asked to speak with you." Talia felt her heart skip a beat. "With me? Why?" "I don't know. She wouldn't say." "You don't have to go," Olivia said, joining them. "After what she said to you at the gala." "No, I'll go," Talia decided. "If she wants to talk, I'll listen." Elliot squeezed her hand. "I'll be right outside the door." Victoria Reeves was sitting beside her husband's bed when Talia entered the room. Richard lay unconscious, connected to various machines, looking smaller and more vulnerable than Talia had imagined possible. Victoria looked up, her perfect composure, finally cracked by grief and fear. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice hoarse from tears. Talia nodded, unsure what to say. She had imagined many confrontations with this woman, had rehearsed cutting remarks and dignified responses to her cruelty. But seeing her now, broken by worry for her husband, Talia felt only a strange mix of pity and caution. "Elliot said you wanted to speak with me," she prompted when Victoria remained silent. "Yes." Victoria gestured to a chair on the other side of the bed. "Please sit." Talia sat, maintaining her distance from the woman who had once told her she didn't belong in their family. "I owe you an apology," Victoria said finally, the words seeming to cost her great effort. "What I said to you at the gala, it was unforgivable." "Yes, it was," Talia agreed, not making it easy for her. Victoria nodded, accepting the rebuke. "I was raised with certain beliefs, prejudices. I never questioned them, never saw them for what they were until everything fell apart." She looked at her unconscious husband. "Richard's heart attack has made me reevaluate many things." "I'm sorry about your husband," Talia said sincerely. "I hope he recovers." "The doctors aren't optimistic," Victoria admitted. "And if he dies, he'll die estranged from his son. That's my fault, mine and Richard's." "You pushed Elliot away," Talia agreed. "You chose your prejudices over your son's happiness." "Yes." Victoria looked at Talia directly. "I was wrong. About many things, but especially about you. I see now what my son saw. Your strength, your loyalty, your love for him." Talia wasn't sure what to say. This was the last thing she had expected from Victoria Reeves. "I don't expect forgiveness," Victoria continued, "but I wanted you to know that I regret what I did, what I said, and I hope that someday Elliot might find it in his heart to give us another chance. Both of us." "That's not for me to decide," Talia said carefully. "But I know Elliot. He loves you, despite everything. That's why he's here now." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you for bringing him back to us, even if it's just to say goodbye." After leaving Victoria, Talia found Elliot in the hospital cafeteria, staring into a cup of untouched coffee. "How did it go?" he asked as she sat beside him. She apologized. Talia said, still surprised by the fact. "She seems different." "Crisis has a way of changing people," Elliot observed, "or at least showing who they really are underneath." "What are you thinking?" Talia asked, sensing his inner conflict. "I'm thinking about forgiveness," Elliot admitted. "About whether it's possible to forgive someone who hurt you so deeply, who tried to destroy everything you love." "Forgiveness isn't about them," Talia said gently. "It's about you, about setting yourself free from the weight of anger and resentment." Elliot looked at her with wonder. "After everything they did to you, you can still talk about forgiveness." "I'm not saying it's easy," Talia replied. just that it's possible, and maybe necessary if you want to find peace. They stayed at the hospital through the night, Elliot taking turns with Olivia to sit with their father while their mother rested. Talia remained in the waiting room, a steady presence for whenever Elliot needed her. In the early hours of the morning, Richard Reeves's condition took a turn for the worse. The family was called to his bedside. Talia waited outside, giving them privacy for what might be their final moments together. After an hour, Elliot emerged, his eyes red but dry. "He's stabilized," he said, "but the doctors say his heart is very weak. They're not sure if he'll recover." "What can I do?" Talia asked, taking his hand. "Just be here," Elliot said. "That's all I need." Days passed, blending together in the sterile hospital environment. Richard remained in critical condition, sometimes improving slightly, then declining again. Victoria rarely left his side. Elliot and Olivia established an uneasy truce with their mother, the shared worry for their father temporarily bridging the deep divides between them. Talia called their friends in Florence daily, checking on the shop, reassuring them that they would return as soon as possible. But as days turned into a week, then two, the reality of their situation became clear. They wouldn't be returning to Italy anytime soon. "We should postpone the shop opening," Talia said one evening as she and Elliot ate a quiet dinner in the hotel restaurant. "And maybe the wedding too." Elliot looked pained. "I hate asking you to put your dreams on hold again." "They're our dreams," Talia corrected him, "and they'll still be there when the time is right." "What if—" Elliot hesitated. "What if we got married here? Not a big ceremony, just something small and private. I don't want to wait any longer to make you my wife." Talia's heart swelled with love for this man, who even in the midst of family crisis was thinking of their future together. "Are you sure? With everything going on with your father?" "Life goes on, even in the shadow of death," Elliot said. "Maybe especially then. I want to celebrate our love, Talia, no matter what happens with my father." 2 days later, they were married in the hospital's small chapel. Sarah and Mike flew in for the occasion. Jen was there as maid of honor. Olivia stood beside her brother. Even Victoria attended, sitting quietly in the back row. It wasn't the garden wedding they had planned, but as Talia looked into Elliot's eyes and promised to love him through all of life's joys and sorrows, she knew it was perfect in its own way. "You didn't save me," she told him in her vows. "You saw me, and now I never have to shrink again." Elliot's voice broke as he responded, "You taught me that real strength isn't found in wealth or power, but in the courage to be true to yourself and to love without fear." After the ceremony, Elliot asked if they could visit his father. Still in her simple white dress, Talia accompanied her new husband to the ICU. Richard remained unconscious, but Elliot spoke to him anyway, telling him about the wedding, introducing Talia as his wife. "I hope you get to know her someday, Dad," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "She's the best person I've ever met." As they were leaving, a nurse rushed past them into the room, then called for a doctor. Alarms were blaring from the machines. Victoria, who had been following them at a distance, pushed past into the room. "What's happening?" she demanded. "His heart rhythm is dangerously irregular," the doctor explained, as more medical staff rushed. "So we need to stabilize him." The next few hours were a blur of activity, of doctors coming and going, of technical terms that meant little to anyone but the medical professionals. Finally, a tired-looking doctor approached the family in the waiting room. "We've stabilized him for now," she said, "but I have to be honest, his heart is very weak. Without a transplant, his chances of long-term survival are slim." "A transplant?" Victoria repeated. "Is that possible?" "He's on the list," the doctor explained. "But hearts are rare and the waiting list is long. Given his age and condition," she didn't need to finish the sentence. That night in their hotel room, Elliot was quieter than usual. Talia gave him space, knowing he was processing the difficult news about his father. "I keep thinking about our wedding vows," he said finally, as they lay in bed. "About loving through joy and sorrow. I never expected the sorrow to come so quickly." "That's life," Talia said, nestling against him. "Unpredictable, sometimes cruel, sometimes beautiful. But we face it together now." together." Elliot agreed, holding her close. The next morning brought unexpected news. A heart had become available, and Richard was a match. He was being prepped for surgery immediately. "It's a miracle," Victoria said, her face transformed by hope. "A chance for a new beginning." The surgery lasted through the day and into the evening. The family waited together, the hours of shared anxiety creating a fragile bond where before there had been only hostility and hurt. Finally, the surgeon appeared, looking tired but satisfied. "The surgery was successful," he announced. "The new heart is functioning well. The next 48 hours will be critical, but if he makes it through, his chances for recovery are good." Relief swept through the waiting room. Victoria wept openly. Olivia hugged her brother, who stood stunned by the sudden turn of events. "He's going to live," Elliot whispered, as if afraid to believe it. The following days were tense but hopeful. Richard remained heavily sedated as his body adjusted to the new heart. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. Each day brought small improvements. 1 week after the surgery, Richard opened his eyes. He was weak, confused, but alive. When he recognized Victoria beside his bed, he squeezed her hand feebly. "I want to see my son," were his first words when Elliot entered the room. His father looked at him for a long moment, then extended a trembling hand. Elliot hesitated before taking it. "I'm sorry," Richard whispered, the words barely audible. "For everything." Elliot felt tears sting his eyes. "Rest, Dad. We can talk when you're stronger." As Richard recovered, slowly gaining strength, the conversations began. Difficult, painful talks about the past, about the harm the Reeves family had caused, about the possibility of redemption. Richard, facing his own mortality, seemed genuinely changed. He asked to meet Talia properly, to get to know the woman his son had chosen. Their first meeting was awkward, laden with the weight of past wrongs. But Richard made a visible effort to be respectful, to listen, to understand who Talia was beyond the prejudices he had held. "My son chose well," he told her, after hearing about her dreams for their flower and poetry cafe. "Better than I ever did for him." Victoria, too, was making efforts to change. She visited a therapist regularly, confronting her ingrained prejudices, learning to see beyond the narrow worldview she had been raised with. It was a slow, imperfect process, but her determination seemed genuine. As Richard's recovery progressed, conversations turned to the future of the Reeves Corporation. The investigations were ongoing, the reputation severely damaged, but the company itself remained. "I want to make it right," Richard told Elliot during one of their talks. "I can't undo the past, but I can try to build something better for the future." "How?" Elliot asked skeptically. "I need your help," Richard admitted. "Your vision, your integrity. Help me transform the company into something we can be proud of." Elliot was torn. He had built a new life with Talia, far from the Reeves legacy. The thought of returning to the corporate world, even to help reform it, filled him with dread. "I need to discuss this with my wife," he said. That night he and Talia talked late into the night, weighing options, considering possibilities. "What do you want to do?" Talia asked. "Not what you think you should do, or what your father wants." "What do you want?" Elliot thought carefully. "I want to help make things right. The Reeves Corporation hurt a lot of people over the years. If I can be part of fixing that, I feel like I should. But I also want our life in Florence, the shop, the simple pleasures we found there. I don't want to lose that." Talia considered this. "Maybe we don't have to choose. Maybe we can have both." "How?" "What if we split our time? 6 months in Florence, running the shop, living our quiet life. 6 months here, helping reform the company. Not forever, just until the transformation is on solid ground." Elliot looked at her with wonder. "You would do that? Go back and forth, live in 2 worlds?" "Our home is with each other," Talia said simply. "The location is just details." The next day, Elliot presented their proposal to his father. Richard was surprised but grateful for any involvement Elliot was willing to offer. "It's more than I deserve," he admitted. "It's not about what you deserve," Elliot said. "It's about what's right, about making amends to the people who were harmed." plans began to take shape. The Reeves Corporation would establish a foundation focused on fair housing and community development in neighborhoods they had previously discriminated against. They would implement new policies ensuring diversity at all levels of the company, and they would publicly acknowledge past wrongs, committing to a different future. As Richard grew stronger, he took an active role in these plans, working alongside his son to rebuild not just the company, but their relationship as well. It was tentative, fragile, marked by occasional setbacks and disagreements. But it was progress. 3 months after Richard's surgery, Talia and Elliot returned to Florence. Their shop was waiting, cared for by friends during their absence. They opened Moonlight Blooms with a small celebration, inviting neighbors and fellow merchants, filling the space with laughter and poetry and the scent of flowers. Life fell into a new rhythm. Months in Florence running their shop, living simply and joyfully. Then months in America working with Richard and the team of lawyers and community activists to transform the Reeves Corporation. It wasn't perfect, but it was rich with purpose and love. On warm evenings in Florence, they would dance barefoot in their garden, surrounded by lavender and fairy lights, lost in each other's arms. In America, they stayed in Elliot's old apartment, tending the garden they had first planted together, building bridges with his family, one careful conversation at a time. Victoria and Richard visited them in Florence the following spring. It was awkward at first, the elder Reeves clearly uncomfortable in the modest surroundings, trying but not always succeeding to hide their ingrained snobbery. But they made an effort, and that meant something. "Your shop is charming," Victoria told Talia, the compliment clearly genuine despite her discomfort. "I can see why you love it here." Richard spent long hours talking with Elliot in the garden, discussions that sometimes grew heated, but always ended with greater understanding between father and son. "He's trying," Elliot told Talia after one such conversation. "It's not easy for him to question everything he's believed his whole life, but he's trying. That's all any of us can do," Talia replied. "Try to be better today than we were yesterday." A year after their wedding, Talia discovered she was pregnant. They were in Florence when they got the news and decided to stay there for the duration of the pregnancy. The apartment above their shop was small but cozy, perfect for starting their family. Richard and Victoria flew in for the birth of their grandson, a healthy boy they named Thomas, after Talia's grandfather. Watching Victoria hold the baby, her face soft with wonder, Talia realized how far they had all come from that terrible night at the gala. "He's beautiful," Victoria whispered, tears in her eyes. "Thank you for letting me be part of his life." "Family is family," Talia said simply, "even when it's complicated." As Thomas grew, so did the healing between the generations. The boy became a bridge, connecting past to future, mending what had once seemed irreparably broken. He would know both worlds, the simple joy of the flower shop in Florence and the complex legacy of the Reeves name in America. When Thomas was 2, Talia and Elliot made a decision. They would base themselves permanently in Florence, where their shop was thriving and their life was full. Elliot would continue to consult with the Reeves Corporation remotely, flying to America for quarterly meetings, but their home would be in Italy. "Are you sure?" Talia asked him. "The company has come so far under your guidance." "It's time to let others take the lead," Elliot said. "I've done what I can. Now I want to focus on our family, our shop, our life here." On their last night in America before the move became permanent, Elliot and Talia had dinner with his parents. The relationship had evolved over the years, not perfect, not without tensions, but genuine in its own way. "I never thought I'd say this," Richard admitted over dessert, "but you were right to choose your own path, son. Seeing what you've built with Talia, the man you've become, I'm proud of you." "Thank you, Dad," Elliot said, the words still feeling strange but welcome on his tongue. "That means a lot." Later that night, as they packed the last of their belongings, Talia found Elliot standing on the terrace of his apartment, looking out at the city lights. "Any regrets?" she asked, joining him. "Not one," he replied, putting his arm around her. "Every choice, every struggle led us here. I wouldn't change a thing. Their final morning in America dawned bright and clear. As they prepared to leave for the airport, a delivery arrived. A large, flat package wrapped in brown paper. "What's this?" Talia asked as Elliot opened it. Inside was a painting, a beautiful rendering of a garden filled with lavender, with two figures dancing barefoot under fairy lights. A card attached read, "For your new home. With love, Victoria and Richard." Talia felt tears spring to her eyes. It was an acknowledgement of their life, their love, their choices. A blessing, of sorts, from the people who had once tried to tear them apart. At the airport, their family gathered to say goodbye. Sarah, now in her final year of college. Mike, engaged to be married himself. Olivia, who had found her own path separate from the Reeves legacy. And Richard and Victoria, standing somewhat awkwardly to the side, still learning how to be part of this new blended family. "This isn't goodbye," Talia assured them all. "It's just until next time." On the plane, with Thomas sleeping peacefully between them, Elliot took Talia's hand. "Do you remember the first time we flew to Florence together, after I stopped the plane?" Talia smiled at the memory. "How could I forget? You caused quite a scene." "I was desperate," Elliot admitted. "I couldn't lose you again." "You never will," Talia promised, squeezing his hand. "Whatever happens, whatever changes, we face it together." As the plane lifted off, carrying them back to the life they had chosen, Talia thought about their journey, from that stormy night in her flower shop to this moment of contentment and peace. They had faced prejudice and rejection, scandal and estrangement, illness and reconciliation. Through it all, their love had only grown stronger, deeper, more resilient. In Florence, their shop awaited them, their garden ready for spring planting, their life together stretching out with possibilities. They had chosen each other again and again, through every challenge and change, and that choice had made all the difference. That evening, as the sun set over Florence, Elliot and Talia danced in their garden, barefoot under fairy lights, surrounded by wild lavender, while their son watched with delight from his blanket on the grass. The world for once had left them in peace, and in that peace they had found everything they had ever truly wanted. "I love you," Elliot whispered, holding Talia close as they swayed to music only they could hear. "Every day, I love you more. And—" "I love you," Talia replied, her heart full to bursting. "The man who helped me carry soil bags and listen to me read poetry aloud. The man who gave up everything that didn't matter to find what did. The man who ran through an airport shouting, 'Stop that plane, I love her.'" Elliot laughed, spinning her in a circle. "I'd do it again in a heartbeat." "I know," Talia said, smiling up at him. "That's why I love you." As night fell, wrapping the garden in gentle darkness, they continued to dance. Two souls who had found in each other not just love but home. And in that home they had built something beautiful, a life filled with flowers and poetry, with forgiveness and growth, with the simple, profound joy of loving and being loved in return. In the end, that was all that mattered. That was everything. The end.